Hello friends at home. In this video I will be doing today's math lesson with you. Our math lesson today begins on page 171. If you have your packet in front of you that Mrs. Hatkoff and I sent home, for most of you it will be the top page in your packet. There were a couple of you that had a few extra pages in yours, so you just have to turn through them until you get to this page. It says 5-3 at the top and it says 171 at the bottom. For today's lesson, you are going to need your cubes that are found in your math kit. Mrs. Hatkoff and I made sure to send home your manipulative kits for you to use while you're virtual learning. So you need to make sure that you get out your bag of cubes, for this lesson, and then you can gently set the rest of your kit aside. Please make sure you're taking care of those kits while they're at home with you, because as soon as we come back to school in a couple of weeks, you're going to need to bring those back with you because we will continue to use them for the remainder of our school year. Okay? So once you have your cubes out and ready to go, and you have your paper out to the correct page, 171, we can get started. If you need a little extra time to get your materials together, go ahead and pause the video, go get your things together, and then when you unpause, we'll pick up right where we left off, okay? All right, so on the top of page 171, it says same size length units. You can measure the length of objects. Length is how long an object is in units. Use cubes to measure the length of a pencil. The cube is the unit of measure. So for my class, you'll remember we watched a video where they used different monster feet to measure. We used last week paper clips. I know Mrs. Hatkoff's class did as well. You used paper clips to measure. And now we're going to be using cubes. Whatever you are using to measure, that is what we are calling the unit. So this word is unit, and in this case, we're using cubes as our unit. So it says, make sure you line up the cubes with the pencil and count the cubes. Remember, it's really important whenever we're comparing lengths using units that we make sure they start at the same spot. Okay, and I'll show you why that's important. So right now I'm going to take out some cubes. Doesn't matter what color you use. And I'm going to line them up here. I have 1 cube, 2 cubes, 3 cubes, 4 cubes. And you can see that this pencil is 4 cubes long. If I were to start my cubes not lining them up at the end, let's say I started right here, 1 cube, 2 cube, 3 cube, I would say this is 3 cubes long, but that would not be correct because I forgot about all of this space here. So make sure when you're lining up your cubes to measure that you line them up right at the end of the object that you are measuring, okay? So let's go down now to the practice area. And it says use your cubes to measure the length of each picture. Measure between the red lines. So they have marked for us each object that we're measuring. They put lines to show us where the object begins and where it ends. So when we put our cubes on those objects, we need to make sure that we are lining them up right at the edge of those lines. So this marker is 1 cube, 2 cube, 3 cubes. And you can go ahead. You've got your cubes in your paper. You can line them up as well. And you can see that this marker is 3 cubes long. And in this case, they went ahead and put the 3 there for you. So you can go ahead and trace the 3. Now I want you to take a minute and use your cubes and measure the pea pod. It starts here and it ends here. How many cubes do you need to measure the pea pod? 1 cube. Excellent. So on the line, go ahead and write 1 cube. Now, number 3 is a bit longer, so I'll give you a minute to go ahead and line up your cubes. And you can see I'm not snapping them together because sometimes that takes a lot of time. As long as you point them so that the little knob part is pointed up when you set them on your paper, you can line them up side by side and you'll get an accurate measure. Okay, so go ahead right now and use your cubes and make sure that you're not having any space between each cube, because if you leave a gap in there, you're going to get an inaccurate or a wrong measurement. And when you are finished putting all of your cubes together, go ahead and count about how many cubes long would you say that arrow is. Okay, and I'm going to move it just so we can see the arrow in the cubes. It's about how many cubes long? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Excellent. So our arrow is about 5 cubes long. Go ahead and clear your cubes away and go ahead and turn the page. We're now going to go to the top of the next page where we see this practice area. It says use cubes to measure the length of each leaf. The length can be measured in any direction. Okay? So we can either measure from this side to that side or from that side to this side. It's not going to change our length. So get out your cubes. Make sure you line up your first cube with the first red line. Make sure that your next cube touches the cube before it. And I have made it to the edge of my leaf. How many cubes did it take to measure that leaf? About 2 cubes. So go ahead and trace the 2. And when you're finished tracing the 2, use your cubes. Make sure you line them up with the red line. And then make sure each cube that you set down touches the next cube so that we're not leaving any space between them. So this is about how many cubes long, friends? If you said 3, you're absolutely right. So go ahead and put a 3 on the line. And now let's move down to this problem-solving question. This is one of our word problems. It says Jordan finds a leaf to measure. She uses a cube and a paperclip. Will her answer be correct? Explain. Now, I'm going to get a leaf and I'm going to use a cube and a paperclip to model for you what they mean. And then we'll talk about if we think her answer would be correct. Okay? All right. Okay, so I have here, I'm going to move my paper out of the way for a moment. I have here a leaf, and I want to measure how long my leaf is from one side to the other. So if I was using paper clips and cubes, I could start with a paper clip and say, okay, it's 1 unit, and then I put down my cube and I say 2 units, and then it looks like I need maybe another one here. So it's about 3 units long. Now, what's wrong with saying that this leaf is 3 units long? Well, the trouble is my paper clip is much bigger than my cubes. And so saying it's 3 units long is not correct. Whenever we're measuring using units, we have to make sure we're using all of the same size units. So if I wanted to use paper clips, I could, but I have to use only paper clips. So in this case, the leaf would be 1 paper clip, about 1.5 paper clips long, okay? Now, likewise, if I was measuring this leaf using cubes, I could do that as long as I use only cubes. And I could say 1 cube, 2 cubes, 3 cubes, 4. It's about 4 cubes long. Okay, so getting back now to our paper where it says, will her answer be correct? Explain. I won't make you write anything down for that, but just know that no, if she's using cubes and paper clips, her answer will not be correct because they're not the same size units. Okay? Now let's look down here at the right about it. It says, what is wrong with this measurement? All right, so this person decided to use these cubes to measure the car, and they said it's 1, 2, 3, 4 cubes long. What did they do wrong? Do you see all this space between the cubes? Each of those spaces is about the size of a cube. And that's why I stressed to you it's so important when you're putting your cubes together to measure that you make sure they're actually touching. Don't leave any space between them, because all of that space, you're now not measuring what's in that space. So we have to make sure that the cubes touch one another if we're using them as our units of measurement, okay? All right, let's go on now to the top of the next page. I'm now on page 173. And at the top here, it's just giving you a reminder of how we use our cubes to measure. And we're going to look now at the comb. It says use your cubes to measure the length of each picture. Measure between the red lines. So right now, get your cubes, line them up, make sure that that first cube lines right up with that first line. And then each cube after that, make sure that they are touching every step along the way, okay? And when you're finished getting all of your cubes in place, go ahead and count up and tell me about how many cubes long is that comb? About how many cubes long? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Our comb is about 5 cubes long. Okay, let's clear off our board. And let's look at the glue stick. We're measuring from red line to red line. Go ahead and take your cubes and line them up for me. Make sure you're not leaving any space between them. And here I see that our glue stick is about 1, 2 cubes long. So on the line, go ahead and write the number 2. Remember, boys and girls, at any time if I start moving too quickly, since you're not here in the room to raise your hand and tell me to slow down, you have the power to pause the video and get yourself caught up at any time, okay? All right, go ahead now and use your cubes to measure this colored pencil. Don't forget to line up your first cube with the first red line. Make all of the next cubes touch. Don't leave any space between them. And when you're finished covering from red line to red line, take a look and decide about how many cubes long is that pencil. 1, 2, 3, 4. So on the line, go ahead and put the number 4. And now we can flip over to the last page for today. We're going to measure the scissors, the smiley, and the paintbrush in the same way we've been doing using our cubes. So go ahead, take some time, use your cubes, write down your answers. Okay. And when you're finished with the scissors, go on to the next one. Figure out about how many cubes long and write down your answers. And then the last one is our paintbrush. Make sure all of your cubes are touching. Make sure you're lined up with that first red line. And make sure you don't stop until you get all the way to the end of the paintbrush. Okay, so I've made it to the end. Now I can count up. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Our paintbrush is about 7 cubes long. Let's work through the problem-solving question together. It says Eric wants to measure the length of his foot. Should he measure using objects that are longer or shorter than his foot? Explain. Well, if he uses objects that are longer than his foot, it would be impossible to tell how large his foot is because it's way too big. So it's always better to use units that are smaller because then you can count up how many smaller units equal the size of his foot. Okay? And looking down here at the right about it, again, it says, what is wrong with how they measured this key? We can see, again, they left space between the cubes. So the cubes need to be pushed together to get an accurate measure. Okay? So boys and girls, I hope you had fun working with the cubes today and measuring. Because you have the cubes at home and you probably have some time, you are welcome to take the cubes and measure different things throughout your house. Please just make sure that when you are finished measuring, all of the cubes go back in your bag and that your bag goes back into your manipulative kit. Again, I told you at the beginning of this video, these need to come back to school with you when you come back in 2 weeks, so we don't want any of the pieces to get lost or misplaced. So make sure when you are finished, they go back in the kit and you put it in a safe space until it's time for math again. Okay? I hope you had fun learning about measurement today, and we will keep talking about measurement over the next few days. Goodbye, boys and girls.